Welcome to today's podcast interview. I brought on Colin Corby. Colin, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Heather.
Please give the listeners a little background. Where do you live and what do you do?
Okay, so I live in, and you may be able to tell from the accent, in a historic town called Malden in Essex, England. And what I do is I give talks, workshops, and coaching on digital well-being and how to adopt the mindset of business endurance athletes in the age of AI. I'm also a technologist and an endurance athlete. I'm fascinated by mindset tipping points.
Well, and me too. You're in the right spot. Here's where I want to start. We've already talked about this, but we live in a distraction-based economy. I shared with you, I did this poll on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, asking my community, what is your biggest vice? Is it food? Is it alcohol? Is it shopping and gambling? Or is it scrolling on social? And nearly 50%
Mm.
know that their biggest vice, their biggest distractor is scrolling on the web. So, how do we take our power back and get out of that numbing out scrolling?
So the thing to appreciate is that as biological animals living on this earth, we've evolved and survived because we're easily distracted. And you can imagine why that's an important safety thing. But what that means is that we don't have predators necessarily all around us all the time, but our technology becomes the distractor. So we're easily distracted, and our technology, our apps, is very, very good at distracting us. So if you want to take back control, then you have to use some of the psychological techniques in reverse. So you have to think before you go online, how long do I want to spend online? What do I want to do? And which apps do I want to go on? I mean, I'm the same as everyone else. I think I'm going to check the weather because we do that sort of thing in the UK because it rains a lot. And when I get onto my smartphone, I'm scrolling on something else. I'm checking something else. And sometimes I forget that I wanted to check the weather. And that's not unusual because of our short-term memory, and it can only hold so many pieces of information. So if we pre-plan to say, I'm only going to do one thing, and it doesn't matter what that one thing is. So that one thing might be, oh, I'm going to scroll my social media for 5 minutes. That's the one thing I'm going to do. And if you pre-plan it, then consciously we're more in control of what we're doing. So that's one very simple way of starting to take back control. But your smartphone is like a sweet shop. Now, I like chocolate.
Yeah.
If I go into a sweet shop and there is chocolate, chances are I'm going to buy some chocolate and I'm going to eat it. But if I'm not in the sweet shop, I don't think about the chocolate. So digital detox is all about getting that balance between when we're online and when we're offline. And so online is the sweet shop, offline is everywhere else. So you can make more controlled choices when you're offline.
Well, and what I'm really hearing you saying is it's being mindful and intentional with how we're spending our time, having intentions going into it. Maybe it's setting an alarm, but I think what most people find themselves doing is we've fallen into autopilot. We're
Yeah.
unconscious and we're so addicted to scrolling. Like although we're more connected than ever, we're actually extremely disconnected and isolated, and what we talked about being lonely. So how do we get out? How do we become more conscious and mindful and intentional using the tool? It's a great tool rather than unconscious autopilot numbing out zombies.
So the first thing is, if we say, and we use the term addicted in common language, we use it all the time, but actually that's a medical term. So what I prefer to say is that we've got some bad digital habits. And basically that allows us to take back some control. Because if we say we're addicted, well, we can't do anything, we're addicted, we're going to do it. But if we reframe it and say, hey, we've got some bad habits that we need to sort out, it gives us some control again. So self-awareness, it really isn't necessarily about screen time. It's about what we do. So you could have to work on screen all day and you've got no option, but you've got to work on screen. Then it's important to take rest and recovery breaks. And that means coming off. Now, I've seen people think, well, I've just finished doing something on my laptop for work. And the first thing they do is pick up their smartphones. No, no. It's basically getting up because when we're online all the time, it's a very sedentary lifestyle, and that has its long-term implications. It means that we set up and we put in our calendar regular rest and recovery breaks. And that means getting up, putting the smartphone down, going for a coffee, having something to eat, perhaps, going to speak to somebody, do something else that doesn't involve being on screen. And if you mix your day up between being on screen to do the things that being on screen is really useful for, using it as a really useful tool, which it is, but then splitting up with lots of breaks, you're actually in control of the tools that you're using rather than it being in control of you. And that's the key point. It's very easy to take the easy option and, as you say, go on autopilot and scroll. And once you're diving down the rabbit hole, it's quite some time before you suddenly realize you need another interruption.
Yeah.
Someone says, "Are you going to spend all day on that phone?" And you look around and say, "Have I?"
I want you to share now your metaphor of a business endurance athlete and kind of this idea of active recovery. So again, we're not saying technology or social media is quote bad, but when we're getting used by it, when we're wasting time, and what I shared with you is I actually deleted a social media app from my phone this week because I became really aware how much time I was spending on it, which wasn't serving me. It wasn't producing any good outcomes in my life. So I literally just took it away.
So my idea that we all know that eating healthy food, exercise, walking in nature, spending less time on our smartphones is good for us. But to be honest, most people don't do too much about it, because it's a long-term thing. It has long-term implications and not short-term gratification, which of course being on your smartphone does. So for professional people, for working people who have to be online, and that's most of us, um, how can I make it a cool thing to be offline for some of the time? How can I make it a cool thing to get that balance? Well, I use the analogy because I've got a sports background. I use the analogy, well, um, when you've got a career, it spans, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, lots of different directions. You need to be on the top of your game over many decades. So it's an endurance sport. There are some sprints where you really have to work hard and perform well. And there are other occasions when you really ought to be, leaning back a bit and recovering and educating and training yourself. So this idea that professional work is like an endurance sport. So if you get that into your mind, okay, what do endurance athletes do? Well, they make sure they get enough sleep, the right food. They have lots of rest and recovery after training sessions. So this analogy with rest and recovery is about, I want to perform at my best. So how do I do that? I don't do it by staying online all the time and working all hours for my work or whatever it is I'm doing. What I do is I do shorter periods of higher quality and productive work, and then I do rest and recovery. And the rest and recovery involves not necessarily being online, doing other things. Our smartphone is a wonderful thing, has many useful tools on it, but it's not good for everything. So there are other things that are very useful to us as well. So that's the idea behind that.
I think what's even coming to mind, or at least what I see and come across my desk, is a lot of individuals are stuck in emotional states like stress, distraction, overwhelm, and so they might go to their phone as kind of like an out, right? A
Yeah.
distractor from their stress and overwhelm. So can you provide some tools in order this digital detox, what are some other outlets that they can do to reduce stress, anxiety, distraction, overwhelm?
So being online for long hours and being on your smartphone, being overwhelmed with all of the external stimulation is stressful, and you get a cumulative buildup of stress. And there's a lot of research on that. Digital detox is an enabler. Now, my version of digital detox, I use the definition that it's a period of time offline. It can be as short as 20 seconds if you just look away from your screen to rest your eyes, all the way through to a lovely weekend or a week in nature. So it's just a period offline, but it is an enabler. And why is that important? I say digital detox because being online all the time is in the long term is toxic to us. It's toxic in terms of stress. It has unintended consequences. So if we have a sedentary lifestyle and we don't do exercise, then over the long term, our life expectancy is reduced. The same number of deaths are caused by inactivity as smoking. Also, if we don't do exercise and we don't get the blood flowing around of our bodies, then the onset in older age of degenerative brain diseases, is more prevalent. So there's exercise. But as you said earlier, the other unintended consequences, we think we're connected, and probably we're the most connected people in the history of humanity. But as the US Surgeon General's report said, certainly in the US and elsewhere, we've got an epidemic of loneliness. And that's because being connected online isn't a replacement for being connected with other people. And being connected with other people means physically connected, where you can see the other person, you can read the face, the emotions, you can use your mirror neurons to understand what that other person is saying and feeling. Now, our nervous systems have evolved to be able to, for us as biological creatures, to live on the earth, but also we're social animals. So when we're socially connected, then we're at our happiest, and it tends to de-stress ourselves as well. And it takes us out of the fight and flight mode. And there was a lovely Harvard study, and I think it was an 80-year longitudinal study. And they tried to work out, well, what is it that makes people live longer and happier? And one of the things was the quality of their human connection. And so digital detox is an enabler to do other things. Those other things are really, really important for us because we don't move about enough, so we must exercise. We don't have enough human connection, so we need to connect with other people.
So something's coming to mind, and I've been paying more attention to this lately. I have a dog, so every evening she gets to go on her long walk. It's about a 3-mile loop. It's like 45 minutes. And that used to be my time to, do Instagram reels or YouTube shorts or like listen to a podcast. Like those 45 minutes when I'm out in nature is when I was on my phone. The last few months, I haven't been very intentionally. No headphones, not on my phone, not doing that. Like I'm just being present in nature and taking that break. And that used to, because I was trying to be productive, right? Multitasking.
Yeah.
So can we talk about the power of creating presence and again, these benefits of detoxing, of letting go?
So, you can't multitask. The brain can't multitask. I have to put that one there now. So the brain can only do one task with the same cognitive resources at the same time. It's a bit like an orchestra. It can only play one tune. And if you want it to play a different tune, they have to stop and then play that separate tune. Now, the brain does it very, very quickly, so it fools us to think we multitask. But Professor Gloria Mark did loads of studies. If you do lots and lots of multitasking, it results in stress, more stress, and you're less productive. because you have to return. You've got too many balls in the air. So coming offline, sorry, coming offline to be present. So nature is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Um, and so when we're in nature, um, we're surrounded by green, the color green and plants and those sorts of things. We're surrounded by lots and lots of bacteria. We're surrounded by viruses. We breathe in thousands and thousands of those things all the time. And it affects our microbiome, our lungs, our body, because we're an ecosystem. So when we're back in nature, when we're present, we're almost like being restored as biological beings, back to our roots and our home. And that's why when you get into nature, it's almost like, ah, it's lovely, and it just comes over you. So being present. So if we're online, we're responding to external stimulus. When we're walking our dogs and when we're in nature, we're starting to think inwardly. Mm-hmm. And we're starting to connect with those sort of deeper and slower brain processes. What is it I really want to do? Am I happy? Where do I really want to go? What's my dog just done? So we're thinking inwardly, and being present is being connected. The mind's not separate like a computer, software and hardware. It's part of a mind-body connection. The purpose of the brain is to enable us to survive on this planet. So how we think affects how we feel affects how we think. So for example, if you're an athlete and someone says, you know what, we've got to do a 10-mile run. You're a runner, so 10-mile run. You think, oh, I could do without that, but yeah, okay, I'll go and do a 10-mile run. Because your body and you know that you can do a 10-mile run. But if you're tired and you've got a heavy rucksack on your back and you're just about to go up a hill, that hill's going to look much steeper. So there's a connection. Actually, if you're scared of spiders, they're going to look much bigger as well. But there's that connection between the mind and the body. So when we're offline, we reconnect with ourselves. Mm. And that's especially prevalent when you're in nature.
Yeah. Again, I think the big word here is we fall into autopilot, rinse, wash, repeat, and we're so diluted, our distraction, our health, everything, that we're just not functioning at our best, right?
No, and I the other long-term thing, I did a TEDx talk last March at the Lake Superior State University in Michigan with a colleague of mine, and the idea was identity. It was a themed identity thing. And the talk we gave is, well, how is being online and how is artificial intelligence changing who we are? So if you spend all your time online, then who you are is who you are online. Because you don't have a presence, or you don't have a large presence offline. But who we really are is who we really are offline, to to our dog, to our family, to our communities. Yeah. That's who we really are. And so connecting, going offline and reconnecting, sort of reaffirms, if you like, the safety of being a social animal. There's no safety in being a social animal online. The safety being a social animal comes from the physical safety of being in a community, because we depend on everybody else. I mean, I don't grow my own food.
I want to circle back to the social aspect on like, because we want that human connection. We are meant to connect and be in community. And even what I've seen over the past, I'd say at least year or more, people griping on social media about dating apps and how horrible they are, because they are. But again, like I think it was a good idea to connect with people who may not be in your proximity. But again, we're so disconnected and craving those organic meetings. But then it's like we've almost created this social anxiety because we've been so isolated. To go back out in the wild is uncomfortable. So
Yes.
how would you recommend to people to get off those, to get back in the real world and create that connection?
So one of the downsides of communicating online is you have less practice of communicating in the physical world. Now, I when I was much younger, I, I was quite shy, and you have to practice it. And of course, as you get older, you tend not to worry. And if you're a dog walker, you say hello to everybody, or a runner. Um, but younger people today, because a lot of their communication is using a message format, then there's a preference for not even picking up a phone. And the reason is not a lot of practice.
Mhm.
So it's difficult to step away sometimes from the online world. Um, but most of us are lucky enough to have people around us. So, for example, if you've got a friend or even a family member, then instead of at meal times, talking and having your phones out, just put your phones away and practice being present. When you go to a restaurant with your partner or family, practice not having your phones out. And I've seen so many couples actually at restaurants, and they've got their phones in. And I'm thinking, well, all that says is whatever's happening on the phone is more important than you.
Yeah.
And if you're on the other end of that, you think, oh, they're not my best friend. They're doing something on the phone. So collectively and culturally, we should say, you know what, that's rubbish. When we're together, we should be together. And certainly for people that are not very comfortable talking to other people, that might be younger people, might be older people, it gives the chance to practice those communications, practice listening. Do we ever listen to anyone? Do we really listen? And instead of thinking, well, I want to say this next, or I want to say that next, when you listen to someone, you listen to what they're saying, and then you react to that.
I'd love to know, what are your daily rituals and practices? Like, how are you living your life, since you're all about creating these boundaries and digital detox and creating that more balanced, harmonious life? What are you doing?
So I'm lucky enough, because I had an episode of stress, which I recovered from based on exercise. And it was all about exercising the heart. So I have an exercise regime. So most mornings, if I'm not taking my daughter to the railway station, I will be swimming. I'll be on my turbo bike. And on Saturday, I go for a run. And then afterwards, my dog needs to be taken for a walk. So the dog gets taken for a walk. And then I have a ritual of, mostly in the summer in the UK, because we have cold winters, I will go outside in the garden and I'll have my coffee and my breakfast. And then afterwards, I'll be if I've had a good night's sleep, then I would have already sorted out what is it I really want to do today? What is it I must do today? And that's my ritual that sets me up for the day.
And what would you like if somebody's listening to this and they realize, okay, I know I need to be better about setting boundaries or taking breaks? How would they get started in creating these good habits, these winning habits?
So habits take a long while to form, and you have to do them continuously. So the quicker way of establishing habits, new habits, good habits, is to attach them to an old habit. If there's something, let's say you go for a coffee at a particular time in the morning, or you take breakfast at a time in the morning, you attach the habit of not having your phone to that activity. The best thing is not to take the phone into the bedroom, but you do have to solve the alarm clock problem. Now, there are some wonderful alarm clocks available. I've got one where the light slowly comes on and the alarm is birds singing. So you can solve the alarm clock. you have to move your smartphone away from you. Just if it's close to us, we're going to be tempted. So you have to, whenever you want to be more connected to yourself and offline, you have to move temptation away from you.
Do you know what I heard? A statistic, I'm pretty sure it was 87% of people in the Western world, the first thing they do in the morning is roll over and pick up their phone.
Yeah, I can believe that because, and the problem with that is you've had a good night's sleep, let's say, you're at your best, you could really decide whatever it is you wanted to do. No, you pick up your phone and you've got doom and gloom on the news channels. You've got other people having a much better life than you. And all of a sudden, your day's being dictated to by those external factors.
Right.
So if you can solve the alarm clock problem, and then take that time yourself to work out what is it you really want to do, not the rest of the world. The rest of the world is going to carry on without you for a little while. Then that is the best thing you can do.
Well, and I think the importance of that, there's so much content out there about morning routines, and the point of morning routines is to fill up your cup first, to get your head space and your
Yes.
emotional body and like take care of you first and then take on the day. Because if you don't, then immediately the first thing your attention is on emails and other people's problems, and you're in a constant state of reaction instead of being proactive.
And if you can create those habits and rituals, if
Yeah,
you can do them continuously so they become automatic and that you don't have to think about them,
right.
then you're away. Then you've got it sorted.
Well, and I'll share, like I'm human. I do have my phone. I sleep next to me, and I have thought about it, like charge my phone downstairs overnight. And because in the mornings I wake up and the first thing I do is a guided meditation, but I can use my iPad for that and disconnect my texting and disconnect my email so that literally the iPad is
Mm.
just for the meditation purposes, then walk the dog, then go to the gym, and then connect.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's circumstances are going to be slightly different.
Right.
So it's whatever works for you. But the idea that you should decide, particularly if you've had a good sleep, you really do feel at your best. You should decide what things you're going to do, and you shouldn't have that totally replaced by whatever happens to be on your social media channel or your news channels.
Here's what I want to ask you, because we've touched on this from various different angles. When it comes to having this digital detox and creating boundaries and having more an active lifestyle, what do you believe is a key takeaway you want listeners to get?
So the key takeaway, and it relates to attention.
Mm.
So we have millions of bits of sensory information going into our brains, but we're only ever consciously aware of a tiny fraction. Now, our attention is like a spotlight, and that spotlight can be focused on different things. What we pay attention to is what we experience, and what we experience is what we remember. And all of those things together are dictate the life that we lead. But there's another thing there. Everything that we've ever done has the ability to influence what we do next. Everything we think has the possibility to influence what we think next. So our attention is incredibly important, and it's ours.
Yeah.
So we really need to take back control of it and decide what we want to do. Where our attention goes, our energy goes, and our life goes.
100%. And again, my takeaway from that is in order to get out of autopilot, in order to stop falling into life happening to you, when you become mindful and intentional and you are training your attention and focus, you have a completely different reality.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's amazing. That note alone was good. I love that. Here's what I'd love to do to wrap up the interview. I have a few rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
What is a quote or motto that you live by?
The one I live by now is age is just a number.
Yeah. You know,
And
and that,
the reason for that is that there's a cultural hang up on age, which has got nothing to do with how modern people have aged.
well, and I mean, that's a whole nother podcast, right? Belief systems and what you believe to be true is true for you. But I 100% believe that and agree because the beliefs are, oh, I'm getting older and I can't do that anymore. I can't be as active.
Mm,
Really? Because there are 90-year-olds out there running marathons.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
there were 100-year-olds doing swimming.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. What is a book you're currently reading or highly recommend in this space?
So I've just finished reading The Expectation Factor, which is written by David Robson, and it goes into the whole area of placebos and nocebos. And it's a great book, and I would recommend it. But the one that blew me away was a book that I'd read last year, which is called Being You by Anhil Seth. And it's the new science of consciousness.
Mm,
And just going, and it's very readable because the title says, oh, I don't want to do that because it's by a professor. It's incredibly readable. And it fundamentally just reassures you that being a biological animal and having a self and a concept of self is a wonderful thing. And AI doesn't have it. So AI can't be conscious in the same way, even when it reaches general intelligence.
well, and even that, like I'm not resisting AI at all. I'm using the tool because
Yeah.
I can leverage it, but I'm not relying on it and giving it my power. Oh, that's amazing. That book sounds good. All right, final question. What advice would you give your younger self?
So the advice, because I was shy when I was young, the advice I would give my younger self is meet and talk and interact with as many people as possible, because that will hold you, that will open up so many opportunities for
Yeah.
you in the future and give you so many life skills. So I would say, look, don't be a shy, 20-year-old. Go out there, take chances, challenge yourself, meet people.
I love that. And such a great note to end on. Colin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me.